Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. Excellent. Audio seems to be coming through on the mic, at least. We don't have any music this afternoon. I will fix that at some point, folks. I will. Um, we're also using a new microphone today. So if someone in the chat, if anyone's there, if you can let me know how the sound's coming through. I've changed over to a lavalier mic so that whenever I move around, my audio is still clear whenever I move my head. But if it's not coming through loud enough, let me know and I'll adjust the levels. All right. Okay, folks. So I am filling in for Heather today. So we're going to be continuing with our Bearcat from our A to Z of Sculpting in ZBrush. Sound is crispy clear. Thank you very much, 3D Manic. Great to know. Yeah. Yeah, I still have my mic on a stand to the side in an emergency, but Bluetooth lavalier mic is the way forward. It means I can move around and all this kind of stuff. And if I move my head or I look at the chat or looking at reference, everyone can hear me. But good to know. Excellent. All right. Wow, we jumped up to 25 people instantly. Right, folks, welcome back to the Firestorm stream. My name's Pat, and we're going to be continuing today with the Bearcat sculpt from Monday. I'm filling in for Heather, who normally streams at this time. Yeah, so you're going to have to put up with me for this afternoon. Apologies. Normal kind of schedule will be resumed next week. All right, folks, let's get stuck in. Let me just minimize this and close that down. So let's take a look at where we left off. I'm just going to switch over the material here to something a little bit. Oh, I've accidentally messed around with my light. Actually, while I've done that, something that you should be aware of in ZBrush is the difference between standard materials and matte cap materials and how lighting affects them. And this is something that if you're new to sculpting, you really need to learn early on, is that however you light your model will change how it looks. That sounds really obvious, but it's something that a lot of people forget when they're actually creating something. It's one of the reasons that I generally sculpt on standard materials rather than using matte caps, because it allows me to move my light around to see how that's looking. It's particularly important whenever I'm doing a likeness in ZBrush, because ZBrush materials have a tendency to be a little bit more contrasted. So things can look more detailed than they are. It's one of the reasons that the famous, actually, do I have it here? I don't have it in this version of ZBrush. The famous red wax material. It looks really cool, but it has a tendency to make things look more detailed than they are. All right. So it's just, this is why, as boring as it is, it's why I tend to stick to a basic material in ZBrush. And it allows me to adjust my light, which I have on my custom UI here. But if you want to access this, if you go up to the light menu here, you'll find it at the very top. You click on this and you can move this around to create a different angle for your light. You can also add other lights as well. So if you wanted to add in a rim light, just going to tap on that to move it behind it. So now in this light menu, I can say add a green rim light. Then I can turn on my key light. So this is something to be aware of. It's important to understand how lighting can affect your models. All right. Okay, folks, enough of that slight digression. Let's get stuck in and start working on Benji and Benji, our Bearcat. I have up here on the left-hand side an image of our Bearcat. This is what we're creating. And you can find this image on Pixabay. It's royalty free. Let me see here. I think I've broken my interactive light. There we go. There we go. Something to be aware of when you are using the lighting system in ZBrush. I'm hoping this gets a bit of an update when the new UI comes out. It's not very clear, but I have this light selected, but it's not activated yet. And that's why when I move my interactive light, nothing's changing. Okay, because I'm currently selected on a light that isn't turned on. So just make sure that you double check which light is active. All right, folks. Enough procrastinating. So last week, or on Monday, should I say, we finished it off by blocking out all the main parts of our Bearcat. We even have one foot made that we're going to duplicate and copy over to the rest of our model. And we also have everything in a blocked out format. We've got the body and we have the head. So similar to how we worked on our aardvark, we're going to start blending all this together, dynameshing, and then start to actually sculpt in the forms and start bringing everything together. So we're going to start with the feet. And I'm going to go into my Z plugin, Subtool Master, Mirror. I'm going to merge this into one subtool. So I now have my two front feet. We can then hold down Control, click and drag those back so that we've got our rear feet. And I think I'm just going to, just let me check my reference. The feet are mostly the same. They're mostly the same, just a slightly different shape, but at the back. But we've already got that change in shape here, so we don't have to worry too much. Perfect. And also, folks, remember that with this series, what we're doing here is we're essentially just sketching out these models. We're sketching out these animals, we're sketching out these creatures, and then we're going to do a vote about which creatures we want to work up into final models. That's why we're only spending a couple of sessions on each one. And the reason that I do that is I feel it's a good way to learn because we're working a bit faster and it stops any kind of fatigue for the viewers watching me kind of tweak away, because I'm quite fast at blocking out characters, but when it comes to detailing, I'm a little bit slow. So let's just grab our inflate brush here. You'll notice that my UI is broken. This happened the other day, so I'm still I still haven't had time to fix it. The same reason why I still haven't had time to add any music. So you'll just have to put up with me chatting away, folks. But if there's any questions that anyone has about what it is we're doing, the processes, anything about the industry or ZBrush that you want to know, please feel free to ask in the chat. Don't be shy. And I will answer as best I can. And if I don't know the answer, I will tell you that. Never be scared of telling people you don't know something, folks. Okay, there's too much of that in the world these days. People are expected to just know everything. That's boring. Who wants to know everything? If you know everything, then there's very little fun in the world, because then you can't learn anything new. Speaking of learning new things, I was out flying my drone. I got myself a drone last year, and I finally got around to going out and testing it out. So that was fun. It came back. I didn't lose it, so I see that as that's a win for the first for the maiden flight. So yeah. So at the moment, and as always, folks, I will try to walk you through everything I'm thinking about while I sculpt this model. You know, trying to give you a reason as to why I'm doing something as best I can. I'm just reshaping these feet to better match the shape of the foot. And I've got my reference again, folks. I have a pure ref off to the side here. that you won't be able to see because it has copyrighted images in it. So I'm not making any of this up as I go. So don't, I am using reference all the time, always using reference, always using reference. Yes, you see, thank you. Yes, the beans. Yes, the beans of the, yeah. We have some toe beans for the feet. Always good. So always good to see. Okay, we've got a lot of people watching today. This is great, folks. There's about 60, we have about 60 people watching. So I know you're out there. Feel free to say hi in the chat. As I said, don't be shy. I don't bite. Not anymore. Court order, not allowed to bite. So I am, however, going to continually save today. I'm going to do my best to save as much as possible. On my personal stream last night, I had a lot of issues when I was smoothing in ZBrush and it was just crashing randomly. I think it's a bit of a bug with the latest version. So, but this happens. It happens from time to time. So I'm actually going to add a few more brushes to my UI here. So if anyone is unaware on how to edit your UI, all I'm going to do is go up to Preferences, Config. I'm going to go to Enable Customize, and you'll see that the UI will change a little bit. What I'm then going to do is I'm going to go into my brush menu, and I'm going to find the brush that I want. So in this case, I want my PAB Cleanup Build-Up Brush, or Clean Build-Up Brush. And then I'm going to change away from it, back to the standard. And if I go across to the brush menu, you'll see that that brush is now sitting here. If I hold Control and Alt, I can click and drag that to wherever I want in my UI. Okay, once I'm happy, just go to Preferences, turn off Enable Customize, and then here's the important thing, always hit Store Config. Otherwise, it will not save your layout, all right? Can you smooth today? We're still, at the moment, let me just hit save and then smooth. No, we can smooth today. I have a feeling that the reason I was having so many issues with with my stream last night is because I'd originally created the model in an earlier version of ZBrush and then brought it over to the new version. So I think there might have been maybe a little bug. But with our Bearcat, we started in this version of ZBrush. So I'm hoping that that keeps everything compos mentis. Okay, now that we've got everything together, I'm going to go into the feet here, and I just need to make a little bit of an adjustment. I don't want the claws to be part of the mesh. I want them to be separate. So I'm going to select those, mask them out, and I'm going to choose Split Unmasked. That'll copy them out, and we'll just rename them. And then that's going to allow me to take the feet and connect them to the body. I'm going to go into the body here as well, and I'm going to do a close hold. Now, you could do this with ZModeler, but at the same time, if you're just wanting to close the model off quickly, you go into the geometry palette, down into Modify Geometry, you can hit close holds. It will give you a triangulated mesh, but that's fine. We don't need it to be anything else. I just want the model to be watertight for the next stage. So we have our feet, we have the body, we've got our eyes, head, ear tufts, and we've got our claws. So we're going to take the body here and merge it down with the feet. So we're going to go merge down. Then I'm going to go into my gizmo here. So tapping W on the keyboard, go into the gizmo. We're going to choose Remesh by Union. And what this will do is it's going to take anywhere that's actually a separate piece of geometry, and it's going to fuse them, and it will just create any kind of geometry it needs in order to bring those together and make them work. All right. Go back into the cog, and I'm going to choose Accept. Save the file. Probably going to be doing a lot of saving today, folks, because I lost so much work last night on my personal stream. uh, and the reason, there's actually a kind of reason to this. I'm wanting to see if I can create a few problems with the toe beans, as they are affectionately called. I want to see how well we can retain this detail. And it might be a good learning thing, so that if you're ever coming across a problem like this where you dynamesh something and it's not working or anything like that, we can see if we can actually get things fixed. All right. So I'm going to hold down Control and I'm going to click on this undo state, and that's just going to store that history state for us. So we can always come back to this with a projection. And now I'm going to go into geometry, and I've got two options here. I can either go to Dynamesh, which might seem strange to Dynamesh it now that we've remeshed it by union, but it's just the process I like to use. Or we could actually just use the smooth brush with sculptress mode activated. We're going to have to do a Z-remesh regardless, so it doesn't matter. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to increase the brush size here. Remember, the larger the brush size of your Sculptress Pro, the larger the polygons are going to be. So it's not going to be as dense. So you can see that as I tap, and I'm being very careful here, just tapping on the mesh just to blend that area of the foot. Now, if I turn off Sculptress Pro and just do a normal smooth, it blends it in a lot better. So we'll repeat that at the back of the foot. Sculptress Pro mode on. And we're going to tap at the back just to blend it in. Love you, not the legend. Ah, yes, didn't. Yes, got to save. We got to save. So I think what I'll do as well is I'm going to lower the brush size and I'm going to go around the toe sections as well. Just very carefully blending these in. There we go. We'll do the back. And remember, folks, everything I'm showing you here, this is not the only way to do things. You can approach things in pretty much any way you want. If you want to take this out to a separate program, or if you want to do it in Dynamesh, you don't have to use Dynamesh. You could use something like ZModeler and polymodel out all these sections here. There's loads of ways you can do it. I mean, with the inclusion of ZModeler now, you can essentially just polymodel like you would in Blender or in Maya. There is still a few things missing that I would like to see, but it's mostly just how certain things are done. Okay, that's looking all right to me. Let's go ahead and grab the head. And for the head, we're going to do the same thing, because all of these are separated, but I might actually just Dynamesh it. I'll show you the alternate way. Let's Dynamesh this together. We'll turn off Sculptress Pro, go into Geometry, and let's Dynamesh. Okay, so that's a little bit too dense for what I want at this point. So I'm going to leave blur on. I'm going to lower this down to 120 for the resolution. And that's, again, now we're kind of too low. So let's kind of do a halfway house here. Let's do 200. That looks better. But I am, of course, going to tap Control to save my history state. Let's do 215 and Dynamesh. It's not bad. I'm still losing a little bit of detail though, where around the eyes. That's better. The goal for this is to have enough topology in the Dynamesh to give you something to work with, but not so much that we end up creating a lumpy mesh, because it's very, very easy to lumpify your mesh when working in Dynamesh. All right, So with that done, I'm going to go into my deformation tab here. I'm just going to polish the mesh. It just saves me having to go through and manually smooth everything as much. Let's do that again. Polish the mesh one more time. I'm going to grab my trim dynamic brush, and now I'm going to start cleaning off some of these hard edges. Put my preserve edge up to over 2, just to make this a bit smoother. So what I'm doing here, essentially, I'm just going to do a mirror and weld, just cleaning up some of these harder edges that I don't want to see. But I don't want to just smooth them and remove the form that we created before. Still want to give myself an almost rigid structure to it, or more rigid form. And it gives me the control over it to plane away the edges I don't want. So I hope everyone is having a good day so far. Or a good week, really, should I say. It's been a very, very quick week. Sure everyone is having a busy time. It's that time of year. I don't know where the last couple of weeks have actually gone. They've just disappeared. But what are we all working on, folks? Feel free to share what you're working on today, what your plans for the Christmas or holiday season are going to be, if you celebrate. Okay, I'm going to bring back the rest of the parts now. Just change the lighting here a bit. There we go. It doesn't feel like the right material, but I'm just going to jump into my light box here, folks. Go into my materials, and I'm going to open up. These are from an artist called Zbrush. So I would highly recommend them. They're really useful materials for sculpting with. And if you're a fan of Mudbox, you can get some of the Mudbox ones, which are actually quite fun to work with. Again, just trying to find a non, because these are not matte caps, these ones. These are just standard materials. Because I'm aware that it's quite helpful. It's obviously sometimes it's going to be more helpful if I have a certain type of material so that you guys can see what I'm doing better. So that's what happens with time to time when you're having fun. Well, I'd love to say that I was always having fun, but not not always this week, 3D Manic. It's just been very busy with lots of stuff that's happening. I've been busy meeting a deadline past 2 weeks, finally free from it. Hopefully we'll do some personal work this weekend. Oh, fantastic. Good. As Heather likes to say, make sure you go out and touch grass. You know, particularly if you've been stuck inside for so long. So again, folks, there's going to be lots of different ways that you can block out your forms. Everyone's going to do it slightly differently. This is just one of my approaches. I don't use the same approach every time. As I've said before in previous streams, I kind of like to experiment with different approaches. It keeps everything a bit fresh for me when I'm working in ZBrush. When I'm doing professional work, I obviously stick to a very strict pipeline and workflow. But personal work gives you that opportunity to play around a bit. just going to get rid of these tufts. They're actually kind of put me off a little bit with the shape. Okay. So I do have another image here, folks, just off screen. Let's get the move brush into my personal UI. There we go. Need to start. I'm just going to zoom in on this. Oh, I grabbed the wrong one. There we go. Let's start filling in some of the form. As much as I did try to find that looks really dark to me. Is it just me, or does that look really dark? Here. Oh, let's actually maybe switch to a Mac app. That might be easier for people to see. Please let me know, folks. I mean, again, if things aren't looking clear, you let me know and I will adjust. There's no point in watching if you guys are lost at any point. You won't get as much out of it. There we go. We'll try the Winston Clay. These are another good set. These are all matte caps. These are really old school, actually. These go all the way back to like ZBrush 3. These are from an artist called Ralph Stumpf. And I've used them they're great for sculpting with. So that might not actually be a great one, but we'll stick with it for a while. Right, where is we need to get the nose in place here. The nose is sculpted. Okay. So the moment is looking quite cartoony because we've just got the overall shape of the nose, but now I'm going to start bringing in the individual details of the nose. Yeah, that material's rubbish. My apologies, folks. Edit this material here, push the ambient up. There we go. That's a bit better. So, as I said, I'm now starting to bring in the details of the nose. Start to break it up. See, where are we? I've got a great image for the front of the nose, but just need to, the nostril is in complete shadow. So there we go. That's what I wanted. So I've got grab the standard brush. Could be a bit more. There we go. That's better. A bit more aggressive. See, one of the things I enjoy most about, I think, sculpting is little moments like this where you start to add just a little bit of detail to something. just a new form, and it makes all the difference with the object that you're creating. I'm going to grab the standard brush there. We're going to try and get the mouse to look correct. Again, another thing that's quite hard to gauge with these animals because their fur is so dark. And they've got very kind of slim, very well, like a cat actually. They do have very slender mandibles. So the lower jaw is comes back about, I'm going to say about there. Oh, there we go. That's a good shot of it. So one of the things I've not done right here is, or I've made the snout way too wide. So we're going to bring this down a little bit because I actually now have a shot of, I think this might be, oh, this is another, this is actually another royalty-free image. So I can bring this one in to show you. Let me just grab it. I can't remember exactly who the author is, but this is another one that can be used for commercial purposes. But it's from Pixabay as well. So if you go to Pixabay and search for Bearcats, you will find these images. So what you can see here is I've got this image here for the underside of my Bearcat. And that's going to give me a much better kind of idea of the shape I need to make. So we need to narrow all this down. Try to be sympathetic to the fur that we've got. So, but it is going to help me a lot with blocking these out. We'll just fill in some of the shape here. Funny little creatures. I love them. They're great. So we've got the width of the nose right. Now we just have to get the shape looking a little bit closer to where it should be. Using this image back here. There we go. So we are getting a bit lumpy, but that's all right. We'll fix that fairly soon. Their little tongues poking out are killing me. I know they're really quite funny. I mean, I think they're very aptly named. I think Bearcat is the apt name for these creatures. So I'm going to do something similar to what I did with the aardvark, and that is to just kind of roughly indicate some of the skull features. You can kind of see this, the lower mandible, the kind of hollow part of the lower mandible on the chin here. Let me see. Grab the standard brush. We don't have a lot of geometry left here. So we might actually end up using the curve brush again to indicate where we're putting the eyelids. But I'm going to put in as much as I can, as much as possible with the low resolution that we have there. Oh, mesh disappeared. What are we doing? Wow, we've still got a lot of people watching. Much appreciated, folks. Glad to have so many people on the stream today. Okay, we're definitely getting somewhere. So I've got to keep an eye on my time as well, because it would be very, very easy for me to just kind of get a little bit complacent and not think about the rest of the model when I'm trying to get the head blocked out. So where is the skull? I apologize, folks, if you can hear some very loud music in the background. That would be my neighbors. Can't really do much about that, I'm afraid. So what I'm going to do here, just to make sure I'm on the right path for the skull and the overall shape of the head, I'm going to create myself a layer. And I've got an image of the creature's skull. And I'm going to take something like damp standard or standard brush, just something to kind of sketch out with. And I'm going to start sketching out where the skull would go. So this is going to be where the nose is, roughly, and the cavity for the nose. And then canines are going to come down about here. It's going to come back. And then we've got the orbital socket right here. It's going to go up like so. All the way back. And this isn't something you have to do. This is just something I do for visualization purposes. And then in here, that's going to go up onto the skull. So that's the top of the socket. And there's a gap here, and the mandible is going to pop through there. Because remember, these bears and these kind of animals and big cats, you know, they have very large mandibles. You know, that's why there's generally a gap where the socket is. It allows for really much stronger biting muscles. As far as I can remember, I'm pretty sure that's the reason why. But please feel free to correct me if you can find it online. So that's giving me, so that means the skull's going to come back about here. Again, it might be hard for you guys to see, but I can visualize it. Let me bring up a paintbrush. I'll see if I can visualize this a bit better for you. So I'm going to use the paintbrush here. We're going to fill in, we're going to just hit fill color, fill object. So it's white. And then I'll take something like like an off gray with a bit of red in it. So this here is where the socket's going to be, the kind of cavities for the nose and the eyes. And then if I take something like off yellow, start painting in where the skull is going to go around it. I'll do a different color for where I think the canine is going to come in. The canines are going to be here. Very hard. Again, it's just me roughing this out, folks. So that's where the teeth are going to go. Some teeth at the front. Polio. Oh, I'm not even going to. Polio Ilia. Polio Ilia. Hi. Thank you for the wave. Much appreciated. Hopefully I didn't butcher your name there too badly. Apologies if I did. So there we go. Got the skull. And going all the way back like so. There we go. And I would highly recommend this. I highly recommend this approach to things. Primarily because it just helps me. I find that if I'm working on a flat, poly is fine. Great. Is that I do find it quite difficult sometimes looking at flat gray all the time to kind of get my forms in. So I do like to kind of paint. I do like to paint on the model from time to time, just to figure out where things are going to go. Okay. I have a feeling that the snout needs to be a bit broader, but we're going to do those changes when we Z-remesh. So let's do that now. So if I can turn off this record, you can see as well, this is why I put it on a layer. I don't necessarily need it all the time, but I can actually draw it down a bit. So I can lower that opacity so we can leave some of that detail in there to allow us to kind of then work on the model a bit later. So I'm going to bake all that in. So I'm going to leave all these sketches in. Then we're going to hit Control. Your poly paint will probably disappear. Oh, wait, my apologies, folks. Sorry. Bake all, please. There we go. There we go. Poly paint will sometimes disappear with layers, so just be aware of that. If you've kind of got it in recording mode, it can sometimes make it disappear. So just make sure that you turn off recording and then bake down your layers. So once we've got that, I will go into geometry and we're just going to do a Z-remesh here. But I think I'll give myself a little bit of guide, some guides here, just around the eyes. And if you've never used this before in ZBrush, if you go into the brush menu, find the Z-remesher guide brush, lower your brush size, and just draw around the areas that you want ZBrush to lavish a bit more attention to. So you can, as the name suggests, guide ZBrush to create certain types of edge flow on your model around important parts. All right, so around the ears, around the eyes. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to draw one along where the mouth is, and then under the chin as well. You don't have to topologize the whole model. It's just a case of, like I said, you're giving ZBrush just a little bit of a helping hand and saying, right, try as best you can to push the edge flow in this direction. So once that's done, we'll go into Z-remesher. I'm going to change the target poly count to 10. So that should be about 10,000. Actually, you know what? Let's try 5. And I'm going to leave the settings at default here. Now, you could ask it to increase the curve strength so that at the moment it's 50. So if I put it to 100, ZBrush is going to try and copy or follow these edges as best it can. Okay, so it's going to be a stronger, but stronger effect, but I prefer to just set that to 50. How are we doing, folks? What are we doing? It's now 43. Okay, wow, we've been working for 45 minutes. Time does fly. So we'll hit the remeasure and see what it gives us. That's not bad, but I think my gut instinct was right. Let's do 7. Let's do 7 for the target polygon and try that again. Because when you have adaptive on, ZBrush will adapt your polygon count. There we go. That's better. That's a little bit better. There's a few messy parts in here, but I'm not too bothered about that right now. So now that I've got that, I am going to project I'm going to do a couple of subdivisions here, and then I'm going to project my history. So we'll do project history. It's going to ask us about our can't speak today, polypaint data, and whether or not we want to copy that across. Generally, I'll say yes, so it brings everything across for me. And we now have all that original detail, but we have the joy of subdivisions, okay? So we can make some more sweeping changes to the overall shape of our creature. So we're going to first start by changing the shape of the head at the back and bringing that down a bit, like so. The ears in this image are, again, they're a little bit misleading, but I think we do need to maybe make our ears a bit smaller. Do a quick mask. And actually, let's see, will this brush? Yeah, I'm going to use one of my anchor brushes instead. So I'm going to grab the Anchor Classic brush, choose Scale from the drop down here. I'm going to click and click. So I have given myself 2 points to work with. Let me try that again. Click and click. Now it's based off camera, so I'm just going to now, it's not, mask again. There we go. So there we go. Now I can scale down the ear a bit. That's a little bit better. Do a little bit of adjustment to the ear shape. And let's see if we can fix this nose. It's better. Start to smooth out some of the structure that we've added in. All right, folks. So in case we have any new visitors or people who have just joined, we are continuing with the A to Z of ZBrush series, and at the moment we're working on a Bearcat, also known by its proper name, a binturong. Personally, I really like both names, but I love the name binturong. It's a fun word to say. And this is the second in our series. We started out with a aardvark, and next week, because I'm not sure, again, I don't really want to spend more than 2 weeks on each of these, and wherever we get to is where we get to. So 2 sessions for each one. And then we will vote in the Firestorm Discord about which model we want to work up into a final mesh or a final sculpt. That's the plan anyway. No. So we'll grab our standard here. We're going to do a little bit of work. Nobody move it. Misplaced my needle. Still working on your custom plushie, GT, today. So these little guys they've got obviously little lips, so we're going to just pop that in there just now. I was until my needle said no. Okay. So let's do a little bit more adjustment here, and we're going to smooth everything out because everything's got a little bit lumpy. But we need to connect this into the rest of the body anyway. So that is going to be our next step. We're just going to smooth all this back out. And then bring in our body. There we go. So let's mesh our body first. So we're going to dynamesh the body now that we've got everything combined, and we're going to pay very close attention to the feet area. Okay, so I'm going to save the model like so, and go into Dynamesh. And the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to grab the picker, drag that over to one of the toe areas, because those are the densest areas. So that's where I want to have my baseline for my Dynamesh. And hopefully that means that when we do our Dynamesh, that everything gets kept together as much as possible. But just in case, I will do a project history. I'm going to save this history state, and we will do a Dynamesh and see what happens. Let's see. That's not bad. That's actually quite dense. How are the toes looking? They're looking pretty good. So I'm going to grab the picker again, but I'm going to drop it now. So I know that at 344, it's giving me decent density and it's keeping the shape of the toes. So my next stage now is to lower it enough that we get less in the body, but we're still keeping the shape and in like the separation of each of the toes, more or less. Let's just maybe do 320 now. Oh, that's actually worse. Okay, let's go back to, there we go. Let's just stick with that. Perfect. What I will do though, is I'm going to mask out the feet. Soften out. Blur out the mask. There we go. Go back into our deformation tab in our tool palette, and we're just going to do a little bit of a relax, a polish. We're dealing with a lot of faceting here, so we're going to have to get rid of that, but we'll get rid of that in a second. This is just there's a bit of a process here, folks, a bit of a process. So we're going to take the high-end version of our character's head. We're going to blend it together. So I'm going to take that and blend it to the body. And a lot of what I'm doing as well, folks, is I'm just showing you different ways that you can accomplish the same goal. Is kind of the goal here. Some ways work better than others. But sometimes you find yourself in a position where you're like, what do I do? You know, you might have been given a model from someone else and you've got to kind of make it work. So it's good that we sometimes have to go through more kind of difficult, more challenging styles of model, okay, and ways to approach things and fix things. Actually, more importantly, how do we fix things when it goes wrong? So we have our Bearcat, so I'm going to duplicate it just so I've got an original. And now I'm going to do a full zero mesh on this model, full zero mesh, and we're going to see what it gives us. But what I will do is when I go into zero mesher, we're going to use the paint method. So I'm going to ask it to use polypaint. Okay, bear with me. Actually, 2 seconds, folks. I need to do a fill for this. I'm going to do a fill color because we've already got polypaint on it, you see. So we need to either clear that off or just fill it with white so that this works. Now, go into geometry, use polypaint, change the color density. And then grab a paintbrush. That would be the useful thing to do. There we go. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to paint around the area of the mesh that I want ZBrush to focus on for its topology. So it's going to focus most of the topology around these detailed areas. And it normally works really well. It's a very, very handy feature because it means that areas like the tail, the body, all of this, they're not going to get as much, and that's just going to help balance things out a little bit for us. Okay, and you can change the density as well. So we can change the density of the polygon, so we can have like a more of a gradient. Okay. Now, with that said, we're going to go into zero mesher. I'm going to change this to 10 because it's the full character now, and hit zero mesher, and we'll see what it gives us. That's looking pretty good so far. Of course, I forgot to dynamesh it together, didn't I? That was a rookie mistake. So we're going to do instead of that, we will do a remesh by union. We'll try that, see if that gives us something. Actually, you know what? No, we'll do the dynamesh in the end. We will do the dynamesh in the end. Again, we're going to keep an eye on the feet. Grab a picker. That says 280. I'm going to be a little bit more generous. Give us 300. Hit dynamesh. Toes are still in place. Let's see how the face looks. Face has lost a little bit of detail. So we'll step back, our history state. And then once I've cleaned this up, I'll do a projection just on the face area, just to give us that detail on the face back. And if you weren't aware, you can do that. You can simply mask out an area and only project into that area. It's not saved my... Oh no, it has saved it. My apologies, it's just further back. Right, let's get this sorted. How are we doing? We've only got an hour left, folks. I don't feel like we've done a huge amount. But we do have a lot of people watching, so that's good. I think. A lot of people watching me do stuff wrong. I always wonder during streams if there's people, if I miss something or I'm doing something that people have never done before, they do it in a different way, that they're screaming at the monitor going, no, do it this way, it's better. So with that, I'm going to just go into subtool here, right to the bottom, choose project. We'll turn off color and just hit project history. And I'll just make sure that, yeah, there we go. That seems to be all right. I'm going to check it against Not actually. Let's try again. Project history. We take the blur down. That seems to be all right. We've lost a bit of detail, but we would have to resculpt it anyway and bring it back, so it's not the end of the world. All right, same again. We have our ZRemesh paint in place. So we go into geometry, ZRemesher, use polypane, symmetry's on, ZRemesh. Let's see how good a job it does. Not bad. That'll do, pig. That'll do. And obviously we're going to step back here so that we can bring all that detail back collectively. But the important thing that we need to check is that the toes, yeah, they look great. They're sculptable. We can sculpt on those toes. That's all we care about. So the first thing we'll do, we're going to take our smooth brush, lower it down, and we'll just go through and manually clean up the body. Just get rid of some of those pesky areas. The other thing we can do while we're at it is we can go in and change a little bit of the anatomy. Get it looking a little bit more accurate. Just changing the shape of the legs here a bit. Blend out a few areas. So go down the tail. There we go. So the reason we went through all that, folks, is like I said, it's in the event that you find yourself in a position where you're like, okay, what do? Things aren't really, haven't went along a correct workflow as such, or this isn't, or I'm having to dynamesh things together, I'm going to lose some work. And I really just want to show that it's not the end of the world if this happens. Okay. You know, or maybe you dynamesh too early and you want to try and get back to another part, another stage of the model. It's all possible, folks. I'm just changing the overall shape there, but what I will be doing now is we're going to use the same technique we've used before, the morph target technique. So we're going to store our morph target, subdivide a few times, step back down to our subdivisions, and then switch our morph target over, and then step those subdivisions back up again. Delete the original morph target and store a new one. So now you have a morph target of this subdivided smooth version of your mesh. Just noticed I've missed a few bits down there, but that's not too bad. So just not the end of the world. Okay. Try not to get distracted. But let's step back through this and see where we were at. This is one of the reasons I do love the fact that you're able to do this in ZBrush. It's the fact that you can go all the way back, choose a save state, and then project that. It's such a helpful thing to have. So I'm going to use that for the head. And there we go. And then we'll go back into our project history. Where are we? Why is the brain not working? I'm in geometry, that's why. There we go. Project and project history. There we go. So I might have to redo a few bits that I changed. namely the shape, and smooth out a few sections here. But that's no big deal. All right. Now we can start to refine our forms a bit. Whoa, we've lost pressure sensitivity. Okay, another thing, folks, if you do lose pressure sensitivity in ZBrush, which it does sometimes occasionally, and I think it's more to do with the tablet drivers, so it might not happen with every tablet, but if it does, just hold down the Alt key on your keyboard, press the Tab key, and you won't be able to see this, but you'll be able to tab through and just tab to another open program or window on your machine, and then tab back to ZBrush, and it will fix your pressure sensitivity. Right, how are we doing? 10 past 3. Okay. Couple of small details here. Let's get the nose needs to be a bit more shapely and refined. There we go. Let's just bring up another, we've got another close-up of the nose ears to absolute okay. Yeah, that nose is right. Again, remember, folks, when you're looking at your reference, sometimes you think, oh, that's what it should look like, but then you got to go back to your reference and just double check, make sure you are correct. Okay. Just grab this nostril here and start. I'm going to mask out top of the nose here. Bring that up. There we go. So I need to make the eyes a bit smaller. So I'm going to bring in the eyelids a bit here. A really weird eye socket, but it's working, so we won't knock it. Definitely something I would probably fix later on when I did the custom retopology. And that's something to point out, folks, is that, I wouldn't be leaving the topology like this. I would go back and I would redo the topology manually for what I needed. Okay, I've messed up that eye, so let's just step back a few bits. Before I started breaking things. Okay. So let's take a little bit of a look at the rest of the model. Namely the feet. So we're going to add a little bit of detail into the toes here, just a little bit of anatomy. Not much, just to help build this out a little bit. And obviously we've got the issue of the fur. which I'm sure everyone's a bit curious about. Well, normally I would just sculpt it. And I think that's probably what we're going to do here, but we probably won't get a chance to do all of it today. So I've tried to kind of keep the form a bit fluffier, a bit more plumped out. So we've lost a bit of the anatomy, but I'm okay with that at the moment. We can, because again, it is just a rough version of our model. And I'm going to take a look at ways to kind of add in a bit of fur if I can with a copy of the model. I'll show you what I mean in a second with that. But I need to change the shape of the head. There we go. Where's our, let's bring our tufts back in here. We're just going to take this, put it into stages because we don't need it anymore. I've got my tufts in. Let's get them into place. They're very formless animals. That's actually something I've noticed. They don't have a lot of, they've got such a weird shape, but the type of fur they have is really good at hiding their shape. Is the honest answer. It's really hard to kind of see which bit is their, like, a body landmark or a form of the actual fur. So what I'm doing at the moment is just using the smooth topological brush with AccuCurve to start pulling in, or pulling out, should I say, some of those fur sections. Like I said, the way I approached the form of this was as if the fur was already on the creature. We just didn't have any of the flyaway, rougher parts of that fur. And it might seem, you might think, oh, but there must be quicker ways to do fur. And there is, well, there might be. But again, the thing is, fur is a very time-consuming thing to create. Fur, hair, any of this, anyone who's done any kind of groom will know it's a very time-consuming thing to do. So sometimes you just have to kind of sculpt it. And sometimes there is no shortcuts, folks. That's another thing I would say. You know, there's sometimes just no shortcuts. You just have to get in and sculpt or create it. You know, you could waste a whole day trying to figure out a way to do something, you know, easier. And, you know, when in actual fact, just going in and sculpting the thing would have saved you a lot of time. So just bear that in mind, folks. So obviously, as we step up, we can step up subdivisions. What's this? Nice one to have made. Oh. Right, let me just. So what I can do is, now that I've kind of got those small points in place, I can go back and I can start to manually sculpt some of the fur in, like so. Go back to my move brush and I can start pulling it out further because we've got more geometry to work with. Okay. Doesn't look great at the moment, but that's the thing. It's going to take a lot of time. Oh, hey, Heather, thank you. It's getting there. We're just kind of at the moment we're just playing around with potential approaches to fart. Um, we're not sold on any really at this point, but I'm going to show you another option as well, folks. So don't worry. But at this point, I'm pulling it out and then kind of working it back for the fur. And this is something as well that's good to be aware of, folks, is that you may need to, you might get to a point where you start like, kind of pulling out tufts or details on the model. And then you have to kind of work those back in and it becomes far more subtle. And then you have to kind of go back over it again and refine it. Okay. So it is it's going to be a back and forth process for you. Okay. So now that I've got that kind of flow of where I want the fur to potentially go, now I can use my cleanup or my tubes brush. Clay tubes is quite good for this because it's going to do a lot of breakup for you. Okay. And you can use the move brush with the Acu curve. And I'll show you, as I said, I'm going to show you another approach in a second. And obviously none of these are going to be a replacement for actual groom. And yes, there is fiber mesh in ZBrush, but I've never really learned it properly because I don't like I'm not a huge fan of how it works. Some people can get some really great results with it, but I've never really liked the approach. It's never felt natural to me. So you can see that these tufts are way too large for this creature, but that's all right. I'm just kind of pulling them out a bit, just add a bit of variation. And I'm going to apologize now, folks, if you hear a rumbling, it might be my stomach. I forgot to have lunch before I started this. So, okay. So, I mean, it's not perfect, but you can start to see how this works. We've got that kind of silhouette going. Then we can start to build up the different layers. I guess if you pass out on stream, I'll be fine. We've only got 40 minutes left. We've only got 40 minutes left. It'll be all good. So kind of slowly building up these forms, just in layers. And again, you would really want to be doing this asymmetrically because that's what's going to make it look way better. Grab the move brush again and start pulling things down. Okay. And then, like I said, the style of fur that we have for this creature, it's not that thick. It's not actually as plump as we've got here. So what we now need to do, we now need to kind of push that back now that we've got the layers in place. So now is where I would start to go down to a lower subdivision and smooth back the form. And this is one of the important things about using subdivisions as well, because it allows you to do this. So I can smooth it back into the original form of the creature. Then as a step up, I'm going to keep the layers that I've sculpted on top of it, and it creates a bit of a fur effect. Okay, and then you can refine this with something like Dam Standard or anything like that, and then we can actually start to kind of go in and tweak and build up the fur. Now, like I said, this is not, this is me, I'm kind of rushing this just to kind of show you a potential approach. And if I go into my brush menu and grab the snake hook, standard snake hook, it's going to shout at you about Sculptris Pro, just skip until next restart, turn off RGB. And if I give myself enough geometry, I can start pulling it out these details a bit more. So we can start to pull out some of those tufts that we might want. You've got to be quite patient with this, but you generally have to be very patient when it comes to fur. Step down, smooth back. And then we sculpt. Like I said, back and forth, folks, back and forth. And it'll take you a couple of attempts to get it looking the way you want. Okay. Now, the other option for this, let's just sculpt over those. So the other option is if we duplicate our mesh, actually, you know what we'll do? We're going to step all the way back before we did any of this. Ding, there we go. Skip changing the shape of the face in. There we go. Okay. So we're going to take this and we're duplicating the mesh at this point. And the reason for that is that when you duplicate a mesh in ZBrush, it's going to lose all of its previous undo history, right? So we can step all the way back up to our original here. There we go. But you can see, hopefully, I hope anyway, where we're going with this approach when we're sculpting our fur. Okay. I just want to try and show you guys as many options as possible for you. The manual sculpting method is a long process. It's a long process, but if you, and you don't need custom brushes either, you can use clay tubes to kind of start bringing all the tufts together and try and kind of layer that up. And I would definitely suggest doing this asymmetrically, like so. And then if you take that clay tubes brush and change the alpha to one of the alpha 61, 62, or 63, you will be able to start influencing some finer fur shapes and strands into your forms. And because it's the clay build-up brush with a different alpha, you're going to get that build-up effect for free. Okay. So you can start creating short fur textures like so. Okay. I'll not lie, I would love to be able to work this guy up as a full model because it would be a lot of fun to sculpt all this fur. It'd be a really cool challenge, actually. So again, not a final kind of, not like a full walkthrough here, folks, but really just an indication of how you could approach it. And I'm going to, as I said, I'm going to show you another way in a second. How long do we have? Oh, we've got time. That's fine. Okay. So that's the version 1, if you will. Okay. Let's go over to, and we're going to actually duplicate this again because I need another copy of this. Let me see, delete. Okay. Take this and step back to before we did any of the fine detail. There we go. Let's just step back again to there. And we'll duplicate again. Right. So let's try and see if I can keep track of what I'm doing here. So what I'm going to do with this version is I'm going to subdivide up to the highest level that we have. And then I'm going to go into geometry and delete the lower. Now we're going to use brushes. We're going to use brushes that you can either make yourself or you can find online. And I have a few brush and I have 4 brushes, should I say, in here that we can use. I just have to find them. From Polygon. Polygon's great stuff to get. He's got some amazing tools. And hopefully, yeah, you can see in these, hopefully you can see the names. If not, I can shout them out for some of them. But there is one in particular. That's cloth folds. I do have I'm sure I've got some good fur brushes in here. I'll not lie, folks. My ZBrush collections are a bit of a mess. I think I know where it is. It might be in my collections. Hold on. 2 seconds, folks. Where is it? Really like to be able to show you these as well because they're really, really good brushes. Might just take me a second to find them, folks. Sorry. Could be this one. Nope. That's crashed. Excellent. And there's hair tubes, but that's not the ones I'm looking for. Oh, there we go. Found them. Okay. My apologies, folks. All right. So these are they're just for VDM brushes. I cannot remember the artist at this time, but they were from ArtStation. And I'm going to show you if, for example, I click on this one here, it's going to give me a couple of different options for short fur. And then if I drag this out on my character, I can start layering up my fur. I will try to remember the name of these brushes and crop them in the Discord. And then you, of course, would have to kind of go through and you would have to maybe customize or adjust things so that it fits for your the style that you're going for. Okay. So for example, if we wanted to add a bit of a clump here, we can do things like this. So we've got some clumps here. So these are VDM brushes. So they're essentially just displacement brushes. And depending on how you apply them on the surface, you're going to get different effects. So we can get our, if we wanted to get those nice tufts at the back of the ears, we can, which I absolutely love. Step down our subdivisions if we have them, which we don't. So we'll just kind of move them down. But yeah, I absolutely love those. Now, I might have another brush set as well, if I can remember it, where it is. I don't want to waste everyone's time with me looking for brushes. Maybe a misc. No, I do have a chisel fur brush, which is kind of cool. Again, cannot remember for the life of me where I got these from. I think this one's from ArtStation as well. So again, similar idea. You probably want to make sure that your brush is adjusted right for this. So your focal shift will have a huge effect on how brushes will appear on a surface. Okay, so bear that in mind. You can see here, if I lower this down to minus, it's going to give me a different effect than if I was to maybe put it up to 100. You can see how I'm now getting a much kind of sharper, finer approach to this fur brush. Okay. The other option here as well is to sculpt your own level of fur. So you could sculpt your own tuft out of a sphere. So let's say, for example, I appended myself a polysphere, and let's dynamesh it just for ease. So we'll go into geometry, dynamesh, get that rotated round. We'll get to a normal brush. Let's lower the dynamesh resolution. Do a mirror weld. And let's start manipulating this. So say, for example, we wanted to do a tuft of fur. Well, the easiest way to start this is to use the snake hook brush as opposed to a move brush, okay? Snake hook has a far more organic approach to the way that it works. So you can see that I'm able to grab it and then adjust the shape of it a lot easier than I would if I grabbed a move brush. See? It's just a different fall off, or a different kind of brush setting. And if you go into these snake hook brushes, there's a whole host of different ones. So if you've never used them before, try them out. They're a lot of fun. That one's not fun. That one's weird. Snake hook 1 and 2. So let's just have a bit of a play with this. So say I wanted to drag this out. Now I could turn on Sculptris Pro here as well, and that's going to adjust my tessellation depending on the size of the brush, which you may or may not want. But I'm just going to stick with the normal one. And drag this out. To make a tuft. You would probably want to use reference as well. I'm not really using any of them. I'm just kind of winging it. And then once you've got the overall shape for the tuft of the hair that you want, so let's do something like that. You can take something like a clay tubes brush to start layering in the different forms that you want, or you can use the pad cleanup. I like the pad cleanup because it's just a little bit smoother to work with. I'm going to drag these back, not wanting to make any kind of straight lines, just trying to go quite loose with it. Smooth it back. And generally, I will still go in with my trim dynamic, and I'll use that to clean up some of the shapes that I want. Again, you're going for the kind of the overall clump shape first, and then you can start adding in any finer kind of clump or fur detail that you want, like loose hairs or things like that. And I always tend to go back to the trim dynamic just because it gives me that structure. Okay, allows me to break things up the way I want and control the lumpiness of my model. And obviously this effect you can use this to varying effects for different things as well. You can use it for creating flames or kind of fluid, that type of thing, depending on how you approach it. Okay. So and obviously you could also do this with ZModeler. Again, I mentioned that earlier. You could go in and sculpt this with ZModeler and model out the shape you wanted instead of sculpting it. But I've always just preferred to sculpt these things. So I'm going to grab the move brush now and I'm going to start manipulating the shape a bit more. Change the shape to what I want. And the cool thing as well is that once you're happy with the shape, you can go into the gizmo and you can even try playing around with things like the twist and the taper functions. So you could start to twist this around like so. And then if you're happy with it, so just accept it, then you can start thinking about those finer details. And we can approach that again in several ways. You can grab the standard brush and just start to, you know, something with lazy mouse and start, let's get that preserve edge up, get a bit smoother. So start to sculpt in where you want that shape to go. Grab the pinch brush and start sharpening it. Back to the standard or the dam standard. Again, it really just depends on which brushes you personally prefer using to get the effect that you want. Take the path clean and start filling in some of that shape. And I'm going to open up a model here and I'm going to show you guys how you can approach this in a more detailed way as well. So apologies for the slight digression, but hopefully this is helpful for folk. Okay. So grab the pinch brush and start kind of cleaning up these shapes. Standard again. Like so. Okay. So let me just open up a new file here, folks, just to give everyone an idea. Bear with me. I may need to, got a network issue. So I'm having to switch on another computer here, folks, to pull this file in. So while I'm waiting for that to boot up, I'm going to switch back to our Bearcat. And one of the things I wanted to showcase here, right, is that you can apply all of your fur on a duplicate of the model, right? And then there's nothing stopping you from going back to your original. So let's do that now. So we've got our original here. So I'll just rename that original. And I'm going to call this fur. And there's nothing stopping you from then going to your original, masking out. Oh, wait a minute. Let me just step forward. You'd be masking out an area. Let's move this back. Like so. and then projecting from your original, or sorry, from your fur version onto your original. Okay, so we'll go down to project and projectile. So you can duplicate it off, copy it, and then selectively go back and project different elements back onto it, and you can put them onto layers so that you've got them. So it's like a non-destructive workflow for it. All right. So let me just get rid of that. Let's bring back the eyes, bring back the claws. And I'm going to do a little bit of cleanup on this little guy. Let's just step back a bit. There we go. That'll do. And I'm just going to smooth back some of this. Because I'm quite happy with the way that this is kind of flowing. Lost pressure sensitivity. So I'm quite happy with it that this is kind of flowing as I was saying. And that, I think I should be able to load in this other far file in a second. And you can see where I've put these finer details in here. Well, I'm going to come back in with my Pat clean brush, and let's switch to a different material here. I did it again with the light. There we go. Monster clay is not going to work. This one might work, so you can see what I'm doing. And just with that brush, slowly building up like so. This is why fur can take a long time. And then you can adjust your intensity. So we can increase the intensity as we go, lower the brush size so that we're doing smaller and smaller tufts, and just build it up. I know it probably felt at the beginning just like, oh my God, what a mess. What are you doing, Pat? You're insane. But there's a method to my madness, okay? And a method to my madness. You don't have to just use alphas to get fur. I would personally recommend doing it by hand, wherever you can. And you can lay down the fundamentals and the kind of the foundations for this fur, but then you're going to have to go in and start sculpting it. And it's the same with character hair as well. It's going to look messy to begin with. And this is why I would always do this kind of effect on a copy of my model. And then I would start projecting it back onto layers so that I can work on it. And there's nothing stopping you either from then switching out the brush for, let's just use the rake brush, okay? And again, doing the same thing. We're just going to use small, it's a bit harsh. The rake brush you generally need a lot of, subdivisions for this type of stuff. It's why I'll sometimes do it on a separate model that's then maybe dynameshed. And then if I just go into there we go. So now, because of the kind of wiriness of the fur, maybe not the best brush, to be honest. Do you know what? Let's undo that. How long have we got? We only have 15 minutes, I'm afraid, folks. But we may have to go over a little bit, but just so that I can show you the other example. But yes, 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 yes. There we go. So I'm switching out the alpha again, and I'm using the same brush that I was using before. And now just building that up as well. Now, what I'm also doing that you won't be able to see is that I'm also going between a positive and a subtractive stroke so that I can start layering it up, and it helps to create a natural layer effect for your fur. So yeah, while as I said, it probably looked like I was kind of going off the reservation a little bit with my methodology, but it's just the process I use to get my fur looking the way that I want it to look. And it's a slow process. It's a very slow process. But if you take the time, you will get a really nice effect with your fur. And what I would also do is once I'm happy with this kind of passive of it, if you will, is I'll then go in with another individual brush, like the dam standard, and then I will start to maybe do some overlaps, just random flyaways, maybe some deeper grooves for some of the fur. Not as much, if I'm being honest. I don't do that very often. Depends on the type of fur I'm trying to create. But so hopefully, folks, this has made some sense. And again, the way I'm working here on the temple is I'm stroking kind of forward and then backwards, and I'm overlapping them as I go. You don't want the hair to just be consistent. You want to have some of the fur overlap others and then look as though other parts are going under as well. Okay. And then when you get to edges like this, you want to hold it in, you want to make sure you're in a subtractive mode for your brush and just overlap it a few more times, and it's going to create that kind of broken edge. Then you can go in with your dam standard and you can really take that home. And if you need to, grab your brush, your move brush, either your snake hook or your move with AccuCurve on, and just pull out those extra edges to create your shape. So we're going to grab the standard brush here. I'm just going to go in and clean up his eyelid a little bit. I'm not a fan of this matte cap, I have to be honest, folks, but it is quite useful for showcasing the fur effect. So I'm going to draw in that kind of eyelid that they have, as they do, that eyelid that they have initially. Then I'll take my inflate brush. And with the inflate brush, I'll just slowly tap, not a full stroke. I will slowly tap along the eyelid. Again, this is how I approach it. This is something I didn't learn directly from Cesar Ducol Jr., but it's something I saw him do in one of his workshops, was that whenever you're doing kind of organic kind of shapes like this, you don't want to do a straight line. Never do a straight line. If you're doing wrinkles or curves or anything like that, you always want it to be a jagged line where possible, because it's going to make it look far more organic and realistic. Then we'll just grab the move brush here. Bulk. There we go. There's our little Bearcat. A bit fast, but and we kind of jumped ahead a bit. I probably wouldn't have went to the fur as soon as this. I would probably normally work in a bit more form around the eyes first, then I would go to the fur. But you know, we were running out of time and people needed to see fur. People needed to see the fur. Again, another thing you can do is you can go in and adjust your brush settings just to try and plump up some of these features. One of the great brushes is the contrast delta brush. If I can find the damn thing, there it is. You can run that over your mesh and it will pop your details. You can see it's working fairly well here. It's popping out all those little details. Really useful brush. Okay, so let me see if I can load in this file that I wanted to show you. Yeah, if you do any kind of 3D printing, it's a cool brush to use. So if you do 3D printing of any kind and you want to pop your details a bit before, and you can run the contrast brush over it. There's also a contrast slider under deformation. There it is there. I prefer to use the brush though, because it's a little bit more selective. All right. Switch out, get rid of this, load tool, and let me see if I can find it. Boom, there it is. Okay, folks, so this is a piece of fan art that I'm working on. So it's kind of related, I suppose, to our A to Z of sculpting. Here it is. So what we have here is a character called Moonshine Bigfoot that I'm working on. I'm just going to switch the material here to something better so that I can show you guys there we go, that's better. Right, let's see if we can, so I can show you the different approaches to the fur and hair. So you can see here, this is a more stylized model, but the exact same technique that I showed is what I've done here. Okay. I've taken my move brush with AccuCurve and I've started to pull out parts of the mesh like so, very slowly. And then as I pull that mesh out, I'm going in with a brush and sculpting around it like so. Now, obviously I would have to like subdivide again to then go in with, let's lower the intensity of that. I can go in with my damn standard. I can start to carve in. Then do a bit of an undercut. Now this model might crash if I smooth, so I'll have to be careful. So again, it's all about a layered approach. Okay, don't try to rush doing things like here. You will regret it. Okay. You will definitely regret it if you start. How high is the poly count on this? On the overall model is 12 million, but there's a bunch of other stuff in here as well, which I'll show in a second. But let me show you the wireframe of this here. So the hair at the moment is a Dynamesh, and it's actually a whole mix in there. There's some, the density's all over the place because I've used some Sculptris Pro. Okay, so you can see here actually how the eyebrows start. So you can see the form that I'm building up with the eyebrow. And I would basically go in and start, I said, probably for this character, I'd end up using the snake hook so that I can start. Let's lower the intensity of the snake hook a little bit so that I can be a bit more aggressive with it. There we go. So you would start off with a few things like that, then jump over to your form brush of choice, and then start building that in, overlapping where you need to. And then as you subdivide, you would start to break it down into the smaller layers and the smaller details. And then you can tweak and adjust to your heart's content. Okay. If I look down further into the subtools of this, as again, this is a very work in progress model right now. So I actually have a version of the character that I was working on where I pulled out the fur. Now, again, this was actually using a stylized fur brush that I found online just to kind of help me get these tufts into the right place along the arms. And I was basically just testing out and practicing how I wanted the tufts to go on the shorter parts of the character. And then what I can do here is I've got two options here. I could actually just use something like Sculptors Pro to remove all these parts here, as in any part that wasn't fur, and I could just have them floating on the surface, right? So I'll show you what I mean by that. So if I take Sculptors Pro here, we might go over a little bit here, folks. I hope that's okay. And I start to smooth away Sculptors Pro, the arm here, and then move it into place. I can get rid of everything but mostly everything apart from the fur, and I can have something like that. So if we just like get rid of, oh, that's not good. There we go. So if I just grab I love that. Cool, thank you. Thank you. So I can start kind of doing something like this, where I can get rid of everything. I would probably delete it. And then I'm just left with these bits of geometry as a bit of a floater on my model. And then if I was baking it down, I could just, I could or when I was retopologizing it, I could retopologize it as one large lump and then bake it down if possible. Or do what I would most likely do is the technique I showed you before, where I would, if I can find the body, there we go. I would take this, mask the area that I want. So, and then go into the Z. I could go into the Z project, which is a really useful brush. And as long as you have it set to the right angle, and if I hold down Alt, I can pull the mesh from underneath, like so. Now, I need to subdivide it more and clean up a few areas, but that is a way to work it as well. Okay. Or you would just project. It's entirely up to yourself. So it's quite handy that we use this model. Did you make the skeleton? Oh, the skeleton. Did I make this one? No, this is not. Oh, no, wait, did I? I think I cobbled it together from other skeletons that I have. I think the skull is from 3D Scan Store. I can't remember where the body's from. Actually, no, I do. It was my friend and mentor, Maddie Scott Spencer. She made this the body of the skeleton. She gave it to us when we were at Cinecite, and I've used it ever since. Oh, thanks, Heather. Thank you. Appreciate that. I know that we kind of went off the reservation a bit, folks, with away from our Bearcat, but we still kept within the letter B because this is a Bigfoot. So technically, we haven't broken any rules. Now, there's also another variation of his hair in here, which I will quickly show you. I think I can find it. Yes, there's a hair proxy here. So there we go. So this is what his hair looked like as the blockout. This was just me messing around and using other tools to create the effect I needed. Let me just close that down so we get a bit more room. The other option as well, folks, is when you're blocking out your hair, is you can use the curved tube brush. And if we grab our curved tube, either the snap or the standard, it really doesn't matter. Go into your stroke, curve modifiers, turn on size, flip it, and now you'll end up with tufts. Generally, I would recommend using the curve snap brush, curve tube snap brush, because it's just going to snap to your object. So let's do that again. Stroke, size, and flip horizontal. And if you go into there as well, you can adjust the taper, obviously, of your brush. So we can create something a bit more natural. So you end up with, there we go. Why are you not doing that? Why is it not working? Just like that. Nope. Okay. So for some reason, curve tube snap is just breaking today. No, that's fine. But yes, you can go in and create different fur and little hair strands and flyaway hairs and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, so this is a model I'm still working on. All ZBrush, really. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, everything's in ZBrush, I think. Did I make the glasses in ZBrush? Yeah, they look like ZBrush. So there we go, folks. I'm just going to jump back to our original project, which is our Bearcat. So he's not perfect, but for example, when I was talking about the whiskers are a perfect thing to do with the curved tube snap brush. Right now, it's only going to work on a model that's got no subdivision levels. So again, let's do it on this model here. So I can start pulling out one of the whiskers, and there's no point in kind of creating a new whisker every time. He's always been perfect. Yes, old Benji, he is quite awesome. So now what we can do, we use the little trick that we've done before. We can just hold down Control and create some new whiskers. Hold Control, let's just reset that. Hold down Control, click and drag. And obviously it's going to be a little bit of work. You know, you're going to have to work a little bit at it, but again, to make it look good. So I can mask out those, split and mask points. We now have our whiskers on their own. And then we can start manipulating them. And if we do an auto group, oh, I didn't realize this guy was over here in the corner. My apologies. My it's just randomly hanging out in the corner. So now that we've got the auto groups done, we can go back into the polygroup menu here. And if I choose, I can open it, merge similar groups. No, I didn't want to do that. Oh, okay. It doesn't like that too much. So let's try the stray groups. No. So in that case, what we'll do is we will mask by polygroup, put that up to 100. And you'll find this, by the way, under brush. It's under brush and auto masking, and it's at the very top. Okay. And what that'll do is that when I go to move one of my objects, it will only move the object that that you first click on, because it's only going to affect the polygroup. Okay. Benji's emotional support Bigfoot. That's a good point. That's actually quite funny. I like that. Okay. So at the moment, Benji's looking a little bit like Salvador Dali. And I really hope everyone knows who I'm talking about. But he's looking more and more like a Bearcat. He looks more and more like a Bearcat because we've added those whiskers on. And then what we can do is we can hold Control, click, and just offset those like so. There we go. All right, folks. So it is, he really, yeah, he does look like Salvador Dali. That was a complete accident, but a happy accident. And we all know the saying, we all, we don't make mistakes. We have happy accidents. So, all right, folks. So it turned into a bit of a sketchy nature at the end, but we really just wanted to demonstrate some things that that you can do in ZBrush, different ways to approach fur, and how to kind of fix problems or fix troublesome models. So I want to thank everybody for coming along today. Thanks, Heather. Thank you. I know it was a little bit of an impromptu one. I will be back on Monday, where we will be starting a Chupacabra. So we're going to be doing our first cryptid. I have reached out to an artist to hopefully give me a concept, but haven't heard back from them. So I don't know if we're going to be doing that or if I'm just going to have to make it up as I go along. Alrighty, folks. Well, as I said, enjoy the, thank you very much for coming along. Enjoy the rest of your day. And remember to keep an eye on the Firestorm socials. Keep an eye on the Discord, on the Instagram, and look out for more streams that are coming your way from the rest of the team here. All right, folks. Go away and be brilliant and be breathtaking. And I'll see you all on Monday. Bye for now.